How's it going, Twitch? My name is Skull, and on behalf of East Asia Soft, welcome to today's stream. Today is Sunday, which means that it's time for me to continue my playthrough of SeaBed, a Yuri visual novel. And based off of what has been happening these last few weeks, I got a pretty good idea of what's going on. There are 11 chapters total, and I believe we're about to start chapter 8. So yeah, let's hop into this and see what's about to happen next. So, back to Narasaki's point of view, it looks like. We just had a Takako chapter, now back to a Sachiko chapter. So, if you have no idea where we're at in the story, I really don't feel like catching you all up on it because, man, there's just so much that I'd have to go over. I highly recommend that if you want to see the story in its entirety, first of all, to just pick up the game, or second of all, to hop over to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/EastAsiaSoft, and get caught up. We archive all of our streams, so you wouldn't be able to miss it. Okay, Narasaki's point of view. I found a gravel roundabout outside the station. At its corner, there was a parking lot with a 3-door car parked under a big tree with broad leaves. It was the car I used before coming here. The moss green car's form reminded me of a Civic from the 60s or 70s, but its front was more curved than it should have been. It was an old thing I didn't even know the exact brand of, could be hell to control at times, but I appreciated it as a car that was mine and mine alone. After circling around the car to the driver's seat, I took the key from my jacket's pocket and unlocked the door so I could get inside. After confirming the position of the seat, I turned the ignition key. Feeling the vibration of the engine, I turned the wooden handle and stepped on the gas, proceeding to drive out of the rotary. The sunlight from the blue sky fell directly on my face as I changed directions. I grabbed a pair of sunglasses from the passenger compartment and put them on. I changed gears, then flipped the radio switch a few times as I reached a wooded mountain path. I still couldn't hear anything through the rattling of the car, so I turned up the volume. I continued down the road along the sea after reaching the town at the foot of the mountain. The scenery slowly changed from suburbs with impressive western mansions to more urban restaurants and cafes as I drove closer to the center of the town. Finding a hotel sign, I parked the car at a nearby parking lot. I knocked on the booth by the parking lot and handed the keys to the middle-aged man watching a game of soccer inside. I spotted a park with a locomotive exhibit in the center as I left the parking lot. A bunch of children were playing on its roof. I glanced at the hotel's sign one more time, then continued down to the shopping district through the park's southern exit. Shopping arcades. I passed by a loud pachinko parlor that reeked of tobacco smoke and turned the corner by a clothes store to find 3 cheap hotels lined up next to each other. From the signs in front of them, it seemed they all cost about the same. I chose the one in the middle, seeing how it advertised its offering of hot springs, and passed through the automatic glass doors to reach the counter. Moments after pushing the bell on the counter, a young man in a suit emerged from the door on the other side. "Welcome!" "Hello. I'd like to book a room for 2 nights. The man fiddled with a machine behind the counter. There were 2 empty piercing holes in his right ear. "We have available rooms on the 2nd and 4th floors. Is there a particular floor you would prefer?" "Either would be fine." "Understood." "Oh, wait. Do you have a room facing the mountains?" The man shifted his gaze to the machine again. "Yes, on the 4th floor." "I'll take that one then." "Understood." "Would you prefer Eastern or Western food for dinner?" I glanced at the clock on the wall and saw that it was around 7 o'clock. "I'll eat out tonight." Why is she staying in a hotel? I thought she was going straight back to Tokyo. And she's staying here for 2 days at that. What is going on? I took my wallet out and left all my bags in the room before going to the shopping district. I continued down a road covered by a huge arched roof, Through some of its glass panels, I could see the gray sky looming above. The store in front of me had its shutters down. There was a picture painted on it. A child in a straw hat holding an insect net was running around in a green field. There was a yellow car behind him. There were all sorts of establishments around every corner, but most of them had notices posted on their entrance that stated they were closed for the holidays. I continued down the road, all the while inspecting the many closed shutters, and reached the end of the shopping district after only a few minutes of walking. There was a breakwater a bit further from where the arched roof ended. The breeze coming from the other side brought the scent of the sea to my nostrils. I looked around and entered a cafe at the edge of the shopping district. A lone old man with his white hair combed back from the forehead stood in the empty establishment. He wore a well-ironed white shirt and a black apron. "What will you be ordering?" the old man asked. While I was hesitating, he picked up a menu and handed it to me. "You could choose from original, American, espresso, Viennese, and ice." Do you call ice Recco in these parts?" "The youngster generation no longer does." "I see." "Would you like to order ice?" "One original, please." I once saw a waiter making coffee from a distant pack when I ordered ice at a cafe. That was the last time I ever ordered it. This establishment might have kept proper blends for ice orders, but there was no way of telling without asking them. I could have inquired about the difference between preparing original and iced blends, but that would make it awkward if I decided to order something else. Most of my acquaintances might have considered me a person who voiced whatever was on her mind without reservation, but I actually took deliberate care to think things through before speaking up. "One original, understood," the old man mumbled, almost as if he was talking to himself. "Do you have any newspapers here?" "We do. It's behind that pot." He pointed at the potted plant at the side of the counter. I circled around it to find a well-hidden newspaper stand. It had several newspapers of various dates, with the newest one being on top. I randomly picked one up and returned to the counter. The bubbly sound of coffee being siphoned reached my ears as I opened the newspaper. I checked the column located in the corner of the page. It was a piece complaining about what some politician did. I flipped over to the economics section and read the article with a large picture attached. Then I skimmed through a few more pages and... "Here you are, the blend you have ordered." "Thanks." I pushed the newspaper aside to let the old man place my cup of coffee on the counter. I picked up the cup with one hand, took a sip, and placed it back on the saucer. A plastic sheet covered the counter. There was a black and white picture of a steamboat on the other side of it. I also spotted a model of the Titanic further beyond the counter. I rolled up the newspaper. "Is the port nearby?" "It's right outside the shopping district." "I see. Thanks." "Are you one of them tourists?" "Yeah, something like that, I guess." "I came here to visit a friend," I added. "Last I heard, a big ship could be heading this way soon." You could see countless ships in the port." "I'm talking about a really huge thing, like this model you've got there." I pointed at the Titanic behind the counter. The old man closed one of his eyes. "You want to see a ship like that?" "Yeah, sure." "An unusual wish coming from a young girl like you." "Really?" "We've got planes these days. Only my old geezer friends ever talk about ships anymore." "Hey, it's not like I'm an actual ship enthusiast or anything either." The old man stepped out of the counter and picked up a thin, hardcover book from the rack where I got that newspaper earlier. He placed it on the counter and opened it up on a color picture depicting a ship. "There are as many types of ships as there are birds." The book had different ship models on each page, with articles on their history. A long boat with countless paddles sticking out of its walls like legs of a caterpillar. Then, a ship with a thick mast and a huge sail casting a shadow on its deck. A ship with a chimney on top, wisps of smoke rising from it toward the sky. The old man's wrinkled hands turned one page after the other. Ships have evolved with time, much like everything else, always striving for the most effective way to travel over water. Paddling eventually evolved into sails and wind power, which in turn paved the way for steam engines, and eventually propellers. The model over there is a steamship, right? Yes. You don't see them much anymore. Really? Most of the passenger ships have diesel engines these days. Steamships went out of fashion over half a century ago. This 5-story floating hotel cruise is a diesel ship, for example. He pointed at one of the pictures in the book. Looks like a whole city floating on the water. We might not have castles in the skies just yet, but I guess we do have some on water. Crossing the ocean on water became impractical with the development of the jet engine and the oil crisis following the war. Most of the passenger ships these days are cruises where being on a ship is the main attraction, rather than reaching your destination. They have restaurants, bars, even movie theaters on board. I think I saw one of those on TV. This one, with the chimney sticking out, is a steamship. Like Titanic? That's the most famous steamship, I suppose. It comes from the period right before the war, the very pinnacle of steamship history. Back in those days, they still made them with the intent of crossing the ocean. Is this one with wheels also a steamship? I pointed out a picture of a ship with huge, funny-looking wheels. That one's called a paddle steamer, one of the earlier steamships. Perry's flagship, which came to Japan during the Perry expedition, was just like it. There are also some paddle steamers that have their turbines in the back, like this one. He flipped the page. So, ships with sails went out of fashion even before those. They served as the primary means of transport until the 19th century, when steamships were invented in Europe. He went back a few pages. As you could see, they utilize wind to propel themselves forward. They've been in use throughout the entirety of the Age of Exploration, and have evolved in many ways in their own right. If you look carefully, you can notice that the positions and shapes of the sails are different depending on the period, and sometimes even the country in question. He showed me a page with lots of ship pictures and a world map. Is this the Santa Maria? You could say that in a way. It's a sailboat with 3 masts, which is the same model as the Santa Maria that Columbus used to cross the Atlantic Ocean. I gave the steamship model behind the counter another look. After finishing my light meal, I took out some change from the pocket of my jacket that I hanged on the backrest of the chair. Thank you. It was my pleasure. Are you going to the port now? I don't know. I guess I'll think about it after I see how cold it is outside, I answered while sliding my hands into the sleeves of my jacket. Thanks for all the information, by the way. I had fun. I should be the one thanking you. I don't get many opportunities to talk with young women in this place at my age. Don't hesitate to pay our establishment another visit if you feel like it. I'll think about it. With that, I left the place and stepped out into the poorly lit shopping district. There were even more closed shutters now compared to when I entered the cafe. I thought about visiting the port, but then changed my mind and went straight to the hotel instead. I'm trying to remember what the significance is of the ship. I can't remember. The shower I hoped would help wake me up felt like a tropical downpour even after the slightest turn of the handle. I promptly washed my sweat off, then wrapped myself in a towel. Freshly reinvigorated, I left the bathroom with steady steps and finished the can of beer I had left on the table. It tasted like warm, bitter water. As I closed my eyes and began wiping my hair with the towel resting on my shoulders, a blue light slowly extended along the inner side of my eyelids. Have a good day. A cold gust of wind rattled the collar of my coat as I stepped out of the hotel. I left the still fairly deserted shopping district and continued down to a barber shop I saw by the park. A young woman with glasses seemed to be in the process of opening the shutters and setting up the signboard of the establishment. Our eyes met. "Good morning." The woman made a curt bow. "Are you open?" "Yes, just moments ago. Do come inside." She opened the glass door with a tall Pachira houseplant right next to it and urged me inside. There was only a single chair in the classical Western interior. "I can hang your coat for you." I took off my jacket and handed it to her. As soon as I seated myself in the chair, she spun it so I'd be facing the mirror. "What would you like?" I slipped my arms through the sheet protecting me from stray locks of hair while she fiddled with the chair to raise me up. Aw, she's getting a haircut. "Just a regular haircut. Oh, and some shampooing as well." "Okay. What kind of haircut would you like? Do you wish to consult our catalog?" "No, I'm fine with what I have. Just make it a few centimeters shorter." I pointed at the length I wanted my hair to be. "Understood. I'll undo your hair then." I nodded, and she removed my hair clip and placed it on the cabinet. I felt my head being pulled backwards as she brushed my hair. I closed my eyes and inhaled a breath. However, I was suddenly pulled out of my slumber by the chirping of some bird. I opened my eyes and looked at the mirror to see a birdcage by the register with a red parrot cocking its head within. The barber sprinkled and brushed my hair with experienced motions. She was about to place the scissors against my head when our eyes met in the mirror. She made a few exaggerated blinks like a character from some Western cartoon. "Is this how long you'd like it to be?" "Yeah, that's about right." The narrow room held a register, a sofa, a chair, and a mirror for cutting hair, a cabinet with the usual barber items inside, and an indoor plant. Glancing around, I also spotted a small, old TV to my right near the ceiling. I could see the reflection of my face on its dark screen. Well, this author is nothing if not descriptive. Could you please not move your head?" "Oh, sorry." "Would you like me to turn on the TV? As you can see, it's pretty old, so I can't vouch for the quality of the screen." "Oh, that's okay. I don't really want to watch TV." I heard a sharp slicing sound, after which a lock of my hair fell onto my knees. "You have nice hair." "You think so?" "You must spend a lot of time maintaining it." I could feel the sheet of my shoulders getting heavier as my hair gradually piled up on it with each new slice from the barber's scissors. "Do you come from the city?" "You can tell?" "I can more or less tell from the way you're dressed. The coat was brand new, wasn't it? And it's from a minor brand, too. You won't find things like that around here." "You're probably right. They said something along those lines in the store, I think. You're pretty knowledgeable about these things, aren't you?" "You could say it's a hobby of mine." "Oh? Do you work alone in the shop?" "Yes. I used to work at Farajuku." "Whoa! Isn't that like the hotbed of the industry?" The barber let out an embarrassed laugh. "Hi, Dim." Oh, that's weird. That's a very weird thing. "Well, things have changed. At one point, we had a barber boom of sorts and accepted lots of jobs, but most people these days seem to prefer cheaper options located closer to their homes. As you might imagine, the whole thing kind of faded out over time." "And now you're back here in the countryside." "Yes, but I'm glad I made that choice. I get customers just because I have a reputation of having worked in a big city. I saved up some money during those days, so I have no problem establishing my own shop over here." "Yeah, that sounds pretty nice." "Where are you from?" "I'm from Kyushu, actually." "I see. I've never been there myself." "My hometown is famous for its hot springs." "Oh, that sounds nice." "We also had a port, not unlike the one in this town." Is there some kind of significance to that? After leaving the barber shop, I looked around the shopping district, buying a few things here and there, then boarded my car to drive back to the clinic. The port town visible beyond the trees covering the mountain grew smaller and smaller in the distance as I continued down the unpaved road. My car shook with every hole I drove over. I stopped by the observation platform. I stopped next to the road. I took my can of coffee, climbed onto the platform, and took a quick sip after sitting down on the bench there. I could see the entire port town. I took another sip while observing its architecture from the distance. I let out a breath and gave the scenery another scrutinizing look. It was made even better than I'd expected. I couldn't spot any disparities between it and the road I took to Fujisaka Mansion. There was not a single detail wrong with the town either. The shopping district's arch and the sudden breakwater just outside it by the ferry boarding platform looked suspiciously like my hometown. A certain phrase popped into my mind as I compared the two sides. A world slowly dying to preserve her life. Sachiko said that Takako's imagination exceeded hers by a wide margin. However, I didn't feel that was true. I didn't know the extent of Takako's world, but I simply couldn't imagine it being even more detailed than this. This world could extend indefinitely, like a sponge constantly absorbing all sorts of different values and thoughts without discrimination. And that meant I could finish my job here without worries. Oh, cool. Congrats. I took out a few pieces of paper from my jacket's pocket. The way to the clinic was scrawled on one of them. I wrote that down before coming here. The others were pages of a diary. Her memories. Memories I had to preserve. I imagined Sachiko sitting on a stool in the lobby. Okay. Narasaki took the pages. Okay. I have a pretty good idea of what's going on now. This music is new. I saw a mansion through the leaves covering the mountain road. Upon reaching the black iron fence, I passed through the red brick gates. There was a sign reading Kunugihara Sanatorium on them. I parked my car by the mansion and turned off the engine. I stepped out of the car and continued toward the entrance. The mansion was built of gray and red bricks, its windows and doors boasting sturdy wooden frames. It looked very much like the mansion Sachiko stayed at, but in terms of design, it was an even older structure. Its front doors were open. I could see the lobby and the counter from outside. I pressed the call bell on the counter. A stringent sound reverberated across the lobby, but I received no reply. Is anybody here? Somebody glanced at me through the door window on the other side of the lobby. After our eyes met, the person disappeared. I hurried to the door. I opened it to find myself in the inner yard of the building. There was a tall persea tree in the middle. I spotted the back of a woman with braided hair moving toward the west wing. Oh? Are you a guest? Hearing a voice from above made me turn around. When I did, I saw a woman in a nurse outfit looking at me through the guardrails of the building's roof. I'm sorry. I rang your bell, but no one came, so... My apologies. I'll be down in a minute. She let go of the guardrails and disappeared, but then her head popped up again. You can wait in the lobby. All right. I returned to the lobby and checked the clock. It seemed to be around noon in winter. The glass panel covering its pendulum reflected my face. I fiddled with my bangs for a while. When I straightened my back, I felt a sharp pain in my neck. When I slid my hand underneath my scarf, I found a piece of hair sticking to my neck. Sorry to have kept you waiting. The young woman in the nurse outfit appeared in the lobby. Hello. Hello. I'm Koma Mayuko. I work here as a nurse. I'm Narasaki Hibiki. What brings you here? I came to visit a patient. Just one moment. The nurse, calling herself Mayuko, moved behind the counter and took out a form and a pen from the drawer. Please fill this out. The paper she placed on the counter had columns made for time periods and patient names. I placed the present I bought on the way here on the counter, then took the pen from her and filled out the form with the information she wanted. Mayuko took my form and ran her eyes through it. Are you a friend or a family member? No, I was merely asked to check on her by our mutual acquaintance, and this is just a little something I brought. I lifted the paper bag I'd placed on the counter. I see. Mayuko returned the form to its drawer and moved out of the counter. Follow me. I'll show you to her room. Oh, dang, this is sad. It's sad because I think I know what's going on here. She passed by me and continued up the spiral staircase. The walls along the stairway were lined with small paintings. I peeked through a window on our way and spotted a camphor tree in the inner yard. Mayuko stole a glance at me, probably curious as to why I was looking around so much. You have a pretty scenic place here. I made up something on the spot. It used to be the mansion of a rich family before being turned into a sanatorium. Huh. It was almost identical to the Fujisaka mansion Sachiko stayed at. Mayuko stopped in front of one of the rooms and knocked on the door. A dull wooden sound reverberated in the hallway. Takako, you have a visitor! Mayuko then seized the doorknob and opened the door. It wasn't locked, apparently. I'm coming in! I followed her into the room. The room itself was surprisingly empty. It only had a bed and a single shelf. Takako didn't seem to be around, though. That window's open. That window should not be open. She forgot to close her window again, Mayuko mumbled as she closed the window. It doesn't look like she's around. Yes. Can I wait here? Of course, but we have other patients here, so I would kindly ask you not to wander outside if possible. Don't worry, I'll read a book or something. Mayuko began walking to the door. I'll tell her you're here if I manage to find her. I nodded. You should be able to find me in the lobby or the inner yard if there's anything you need. The door outside the entrance leads to it. I'll keep that in mind. I'll be on my way then. Mayuko smiled and left the room. Left alone, I slowly surveyed my surroundings. It really was an empty room. I glanced at the shelf and spotted something shining on it. Upon approaching the shelf, I realized they were colored glass beads reflecting the light of the evening sun. I shifted my gaze to the rest of the shelf. It was filled with books and notebooks. The notebooks were probably Takako's diaries. I got curious about what they might contain, but considering how awkward it would be if Takako came back and I was reading one, I decided against touching them for now. Sitting down on the bed, I looked out the window, specifically at the sky above the port. The clock in the lobby pointed at around the children's napping time. Purple and pink colors extended and merged on the sky, giving it the feel of a watercolor canvas. I placed my hands between my legs and joined my fingers. If I'd get any more comfortable, I feared I might fall asleep. It was a heavy and unforgiving sleepiness. I would most likely have lost consciousness if I so much as closed my eyes. My fingers slipped out of each other's grasp. The sunlight passed through my fingers as if they were transparent. Just as I pressed my fingers against my eyelids to massage them for a few moments, I heard the sound of the door opening behind me. When I turned around, I saw the door being partially opened with a sliver of the corridor visible through the gap. No one was there. And still, with no sense of any human presence, the door closed. The floor let out a creak. The creaks continued to the shelf, then stopped. I rubbed my eyes again, but all I could see was the wall. And while I looked at the remnants of dust floating in the air, the bed let out a creak next. I blinked a few times and felt like I could almost glimpse Sachiko for a moment. Perhaps she had returned to her room in the Fujisaka mansion and laid down on the bed just now. The sounds disappeared when I started thinking about her. After a few moments, a gust of cold wind made my hair flutter. Despite the window being closed, the incoming breeze carried a certain humidity, as well as the scent of soil. Yet I was more than familiar with the source and nature of that wind. It came straight from my heart, calling out to me. I ignored it, and soon enough it began to wade and eventually vanish. However, it still managed to remind me of the cave I got lost in back when I was looking for Sachiko. I found myself unnerved and unable to relax anymore. I stood up and decided to leave the room for now. Yeah, this is... Ugh. This is unnerving. The rays of the setting sun passed through the crown of the large tree in the inner yard, filling the corridor with a dim orange light. The chilly air I was exposed to in the room gave way for the scent of old wood, with remnants and warm dust floating in the air. I found the rest area right away and sat down in one of the chairs. I could still see Takako's door from here. After spending some time reading, I spotted something move from the corner of my eye. Someone was walking down the opposing corridor, I could see from the window. That person continued toward my location, their tied-up hair fluttering in the air. Is it Kozue? Oh, it's Takako! I waited for them to come while pretending to read. Eventually, a tall woman appeared on the other end of the corridor. She gave me a suspicious sidelong glance as she carefully tried to pass by me. Hello, I said in greeting. She had no choice but to stop. I'm looking for Takako. You wouldn't know her, would you? As I closed my book, she faced me with a bold look in her eyes. Rather than being wary of a sudden guest, she appeared curious, if anything. She was quite tall for a woman, boasting a height that would easily put her in the same league as professional sportswomen or models. Her facial features had yet to fully mature. I could easily recognize her as the same person I'd seen during my kindergarten days. She was carrying a plastic bag in one hand, no doubt having just returned from buying groceries. That's me. I see. My name is Narasaki. Actually, it's not the first time we've met, but I can see you don't remember me. I stood up from the chair. I could immediately tell she didn't recognize me. Well, it doesn't matter. I came to talk to you about the unusual illness you have. My illness? Takako shifted the plastic bag to her other hand and crossed her arms. I heard something akin to stones rustling inside it. I guess I'm not particularly busy. I nodded. Ah, that's right. I brought you something from the town. Do you like sweets? I handed her the paper bag with the confectionery box. So yeah, we know Takako loves sweets. It's her favorite thing in the world. Thanks! Of course I like sweets! That's good to hear. To tell the truth, Sachiko had once told me Takako was a huge fan of sweet bean paste, especially enclosed in something crisp. You know, like wafers in the case of Monaka. It's been a while since I came here, but it's the first time getting an actual visitor. It feels surprisingly nice. Is this going to be a long story? She asked. That depends. In that case, let's go somewhere else. I can't even serve you tea here. Takako started down the corridor. I followed her, but we ended up passing by her door and continued down the stairs. Isn't your room over there? My room doesn't have a chair. I see. Did Mayuko show you inside? What was she even thinking, making you wait in a place like that? She jokingly remarked. The night duty room is a Japanese-style room, so we can sit on the floor. There's also tea and snacks. Takako's twin tails fluttered in the air with each of her steps. You seem to be doing all right. I am. I mean, it's not the kind of illness that affects my physical health, is it? I just wish it didn't mess with my head so I could remember you at least. Don't worry about it. It's been a long time. If you say so. How many patients are in the sanatorium? Only 4 people live here, including me. That's fewer than I thought. Hey, isn't that a good thing? I suppose it is. Did you come here by car? Takako changed the subject. Yeah, it wasn't easy to drive up that mountain road. Right? People don't usually come so far into the mountains. You don't get bored here? It's true that I don't get many chances to go outside, but it's not as bad as it sounds. There might be few people here, but there's a lot to do. Mayuko makes sure to find an odd job for me every day. Is she strict? Is she strict with you? Not at all. She even said half of her was made of pure kindness, actually. Sounds like headache medicine. She said she found out through a blood test. Science sure seems to have advanced in recent times. Takako chuckled as I said that. As soon as we entered the night duty room, Takako turned on the heater, picked up 2 pillows lying next to it, and placed them at both ends of the small dining table. She dropped her bag on the table and promptly disappeared into the kitchen. I sat down on the pillow facing the kitchen and waited for her to make the tea. There was something shining in her bag. I stole a brief glance at its contents, finding a bunch of glass beads. The little translucent stones sparkled in the evening sun. Sorry to have kept you waiting. Takako placed a cup of tea and some snacks in front of me. Thanks. Now we could take our time. What's up with this bag? I pointed at the beads of glass in the bag. Oh, that's sea glass. Didn't you know? The beach is full of them. They're beautiful. Right? I was thinking of decorating my shelf with them. Want to take a look? She cheerfully pulled one glass bead out of the bag and handed it to me. It was pink in color and had the consistency of a stone. Don't know how much longer I'll be able to find them at the beach, though. I hear they're planning to build a factory there or something. Oh, I've heard about that from the people in town. They want to enlarge the port so large freighters could access it, right? Takako nodded. That old guy that told me about it belongs to the fishing union. Says he's going to live off the compensation he'll get for having to quit his business over this. I wonder if a mere compensation would be enough to last him a lifetime. I feel it'd be better for him to simply move to other fishing grounds or something. Apparently another union is using nets to fish for octopuses and prawns, and they don't want to make their area any smaller than it already is. Can't they fish together? He said it's impossible to fish where the nets are already set. There's this thing called a right of demarcated fishery that separates who can fish with whom or whatever. I see. I wonder if there's really nothing he can do. It's only natural for cities to evolve in modern times, and sometimes you cannot avoid making sacrifices in order to achieve that. You can't fight the times, huh? Said Takako, while closing her eyes and nodding 3 times. I took a sip of her green tea. It had a very nice smell. The Monica I brought rested on a small plate in the middle of the table. Takako was busy chewing on one. This is good. Where'd you buy them? I don't remember the exact name, but it was some confectionery over at the shopping district of the port town. Oh, I think I know which one. It's the shopping district that cable cars descend to, right? I think so, yes. Maybe I should ask Mayuko to buy me some next time. Takako finished her cup and filled it up with another serving of tea right away. You said you had something to tell me about my illness. Are you a doctor, perhaps? More or less. I'm investigating the illness you have. What are you investigating exactly? Everything, from the symptoms and the cause to the treatment. And that's why you came here? Well, there's no other treatment facility for this illness in the country. Takako widened her eyes in surprise. I didn't know. Is that true? I nodded. Your system for managing the symptoms is currently functioning very well, so I imagine the staff here find no reason to explain the details to the patients. Takako seemed to freeze up in thought, but I continued talking. It's a very unusual disease. How much do you know about it? I lose a part of my memories after my ears start ringing. That's all I know. Takako gave me an anxious look as I considered where I should start from. You're right about the relationship of those two symptoms. However, you seem to have the order backwards. Your ears start ringing after you lose your memories. It's an autonomic panic response to a traumatic event, which in this case is memory loss. Do you know anything about the other symptoms? No? Is there anything else? It's unusual for it to happen, but there are cases when symptoms suddenly start to advance at a rapid pace. In your case, you only forget short episodes from your life, and it doesn't happen so often. So if you're smart about it, you can use notes and such to refresh your memory. But during a rapid memory loss episode, you lose your memories too fast to keep up. What happens when you lose everything? The patient forgets who he or she completely was. Takako knitted her brows. That's only happened to a select few patients, though, so don't worry too much. Can I ask something weird? What is it? Can patients that lose all their memories just end up disappearing altogether? Like a wisp of smoke? Is this some urban legend? A person who was here for longer than me said they heard something like that. I curled the corners of my lips into a smile. That sounds like a magic trick. Yeah, Takako answered, making a faint smile herself. I almost thought you and Sane were trying to pull one on me. I shook my head. I don't know anybody by that name. Takako took a bite from the Monica and she still had in her hand. However, losing your identity might not be that different from turning into smoke in this world. Takako's features twisted in slight confusion as she continued chewing on the wafers. She had a truly rich palette of expressions, ranging from cheerful to scared and confused in a matter of seconds. I'd been fighting the urge to chuckle for a while now. It's a rare disease that we still don't know too much about, and that gives birth to rumors. As someone afflicted, don't you want to know more about it? Is there more? Takako asked as she gulped down the Monaka. I placed my empty cup on the table and stood up. I'd like to show you something. I looked back as I exited the night duty room to see Takako following me. I used to work at this place a long time ago. Really? She made a pause, then added, Did Mayuko know that? I shook my head. No, she didn't work here when I was still around. I imagine she got hired sometime afterwards. I continued down the corridor until we reached the furthest door on the first floor. In place of a sign, there was only an empty space. It didn't seem like the room saw much use anymore. I fished out a keyring from my pocket and stuck one of the keys into the lock. The key made an audible clicking sound as I turned it. I forgot to return the keys when I left. I explained to the puzzled Takako. Okay, the tips suddenly make sense. Tips 1 all of a sudden makes perfect sense now. I stepped through the door and into the familiar consultation room. I was a little worried considering all the changes the building underwent over the years, but it looks like my room remained more or less unchanged. Everything from the desk and bed to the chair had been left untouched. Even my favorite coffee cup was still there. I couldn't spot any dust covering anything. All the medical records were still lying on the desk as I left them. It felt almost like the room was still in use. I entered, with Takako following close behind. Is this the old consultation room? Yep. You don't seem to have a doctor here right now, but in the past, this is where we perform the examinations and such. Takako looked around the room. I picked up one of the medical records while she investigated my shelf. Upon closer inspection, I realized that most of the pages were torn out. I turned to Takako. Takako had gone further into the room and was now looking into a silver bucket on the floor. It was full to the brim with gray ash. Did someone have a bonfire here? I wonder. I took out the necessary records from the shelf, lined them on the desk, and sat down. These are the records of the symptoms we've discussed. I logged everything I found out over the few years I worked with patients here. A bunch of medical records in German, diary notebooks, and pictures lay scattered on the desk for Takako to see. You've got pictures. I took them, hoping they would help me fight the memory loss. I also have tapes with recorded conversations. However, they didn't do much good in the end, as people are rarely conscious of their looks or voice and don't usually associate them with memories. Ah, here it is. See, I'm in this one too. I took out one of the pictures from the file and handed it to Takako. Huh. You look just like you do now. I smiled. Takako looked over other pictures in the medical record. All of them were black and white, faded with age. In some of them, I couldn't even recognize the patients anymore. What is this one of? Takako showed me one of the pictures. It depicted the empty corner of her room. It's nothing. Okay, said Takako with a shrug. I don't know anyone from these records. Where have they gone? I only know about things up to when I left. They either got cured or... I'm sure they all got cured. I hope so. I checked to see if there was anything else on the shelf of my desk, then sat down. Following my cue, Takako sat down herself. Why did you leave, Ms. Narasaki? The approach of how we're supposed to deal with the illness changed. From a research institute, we turned into a sanatorium that prioritized looking after patients rather than investigating and trying to treat their disease. I had the choice to stay behind, but the symptoms became much easier to manage once we implemented the notebook diary approach. I figured I could be of more use elsewhere. You're still writing diaries, right? Takako nodded. Why did the approach change? It was a matter of money. We never got enough funds, and most doctors came to research the illness pretty much on a volunteer basis, but the establishment couldn't last long like that, so it slowly started to turn into a self-sufficient colony you have now. I guess the patients didn't used to work here in the past? They didn't. That sounds nice. She placed the picture she held back on the desk. She looked around the room again. So, you were researching this illness in this room, right? I've been wondering about it for a while now, but why do people forget things to begin with? It's only natural to forget this and that sometimes. I know that, but I've read in a book that there's enough space in the human brain to store all information without forgetting anything, so I was wondering why it still happened. Yeah. The most prevalent theory states that all information does get stored in your brain and never really disappears for good. You just don't remember it. So how does that work? And why? There are many theories on the subject. For example, it might not be the passage of time that makes you forget things, but rather the act of forgetting actually makes you conscious of the passage of time. Besides, there might be lots of space in your brain, but there's only so much you can think about at a given time, right? Being able to remember everything all the time might prevent your head from functioning properly. Like, if I asked you what you had for dinner, and then that evoked an image of every single dinner you've ever had in your life, that would be pretty confusing, right? I guess so. And I imagine that would also negate the feelings of wanting to eat something you haven't had in ages. Yeah, that about covers it. Takako pressed a finger against her lower lip. I shoved my hand in my pocket, realizing I still had the glass bead she handed me earlier. I assume you can accept that I've been researching this subject for a while now? Takako removed her finger from her lips and looked at me as though having suddenly realized something. Yeah, and you said you wanted to tell me something about my illness. To tell the truth, I came here to ask you for 2 favors. Favors? What do you mean? I want to try something on you. If it goes well, you might get cured. As long as it doesn't have anything to do with needles. Don't worry, it doesn't. It just needs a little dedication on your part, that's all. So what do I need to do? I just want to confirm one thing before we begin. Did you get my parcel? Narasaki sent the package! It makes sense now! Huh? There had to be a parcel addressed to you. A hint of recognition lit up in Takako's eyes. Are you talking about the notebook? Did you send it to me? Yes, that's the one. So you got it. Did you write it? She carefully asked. I shook my head. I know you have questions, but I myself have no idea who wrote that. I just found it at the library. Takako, having unconsciously risen from her chair in the meantime, sank back into it. I see you've already read it. It was full of episodes from Sachiko's life, and my own. Things that only the 2 of us would know. Did it pique your curiosity? Of course! Do you really not know anything about it? I really don't. I just found it. I tried looking for the person it belonged to, but couldn't find anything. I'm sorry. It didn't seem like she was ready to give up, though. Silence descended on the consultation room for a while. Is there anything else you want to know? I asked. Then, why did you send it to me? She asked after a short pause. When I gave the diary a look, I realized it contained a lot of information about you. I figured it might help you with your memories. Takako let out a sigh. I want to know exactly what it helped you remember. Takako was about to say something but closed her mouth when she heard that. She then focused her eyes on something in the air in front of her. It was full of really old stories, so it helped me remember a lot. It was a really nostalgic read, I guess. What about this Sachiko, who seems to be narrating everything? She's my childhood friend and the most important person in my life. To tell you the truth, I think I'd forgotten how much she meant before I read that. I see. She seemed to have completely lost her high spirits. Why don't you say that you know Sachiko? You're being very mean, Arasaki. I didn't know whether that was because she felt disappointed I didn't lead her to Sachiko, or because she was feeling guilty for having forgotten her. Perhaps it was both. I'm sorry for asking prying questions. It's okay. I really appreciate you sending that notebook to me. I was relieved to learn that she understood its contents like she was supposed to. It didn't seem like I needed to hesitate any further. So, what did you want to ask from me? What do I need to do? I want you to treat that notebook with care and reread it from time to time. That's all? Yeah. Not too hard, is it? There's supposed to be 2 favors. That was only 1. Well then, I began tidying up the records scattered on the desk. Takako tried to help, but being unable to do much without knowing which files the papers and pictures belonged to, she soon gave up. Those weren't the tidiest records in the world to begin with, so it didn't take that long to throw them together by myself in any case. Takako gazed absent-mindedly at my hands while I stuffed a medical record previously resting on the edge of the desk into my bag. It's just an old thing of mine. I accidentally left a couple of them here, I explained as I zipped up the bag. After we left the consultation room, I locked the door behind us. I won't need this anymore, so will you return them for me? I took out the bundle of keys and handed them to Takako. Should I give them to Mayuko? Yeah. Is that your other favor? Yep. Takako gave the bundle of keys a long, hard look. Are you leaving already? I've got some other business to take care of. I'll leave after looking around this place for a bit. Want me to show you around? That's nice of you, but I want to do it alone at my pace if possible. If you say so. Well then. I waved Takako goodbye and left her behind in the corridor. The tips make sense, but... I spent some time investigating the sanatorium after splitting from Takako. The nurse told me not to loiter around too much, so I decided not to go upstairs from the room I'd been shown to. At a closer look, the interior of the place slightly differed from the Fujisaka mansions. Both had a big camphor tree in the middle of the inner yard, though. I could see a roof in the distance through the branches. I left the building through the back door in the lobby and continued down the usual stone path to the library. However, the door was locked. And I had already handed my keys to Takako. Well, it wasn't like either Kozue or Lily would be here at any rate. Oh, you think? You think that? I found the nurse working on the flower beds as I returned to the inner yard. It probably would have been awkward if she spotted me as I tried to inconspicuously pass by her, so I figured I might as well initiate a conversation myself. Oh? She turned to me. Have you met with Takako? Yep. That's good. What are you doing here? I expected she had asked that. I saw a roof in the distance from the second floor and got curious. Ah, the library. It's closed right now. I see. It's open during weekends and on holidays. You're more than welcome to drop by later if you want to see it from the inside. If I get the chance. The nurse Takako had called Mayuko made a gentle smile. Well, I mean, Mayuko called herself Mayuko, so. Her breasts were larger than the originals. Oh, what? Okay. But among all the people I'd met here, she undoubtedly resembled Sachiko the most. Though her social anxiety made Sachiko show little emotion on her face, she was actually a very gentle person at heart. So, are there 2 Mayukos? Is that what this is suggesting? Those who understood that would have a hard time telling those 2 apart. Is something the matter? Mayuko asked. Oh, I just thought those flowers were very pretty, colorful for the season. Those are called primroses. They're winter flowers. I've never heard that name before. Is growing flowers a hobby of yours? Not really. The people at the flower shop recommended these after I told them I was looking for something colorful and easy to grow. I mean, it's kind of sad to see empty flower beds in winter, wouldn't you agree? You have a point there. Takako helped me plant these. Mayuko pointed at the flower beds that Takako likely helped her with. Okay, I don't know if there's 2 Mayukos or if this is just Narasaki processing stuff in her mind. If there's 2 Mayukos, that would be mind-blowing, but I don't think there are. I see. What are your plans for the summer, though? I'll plant other flowers. I was considering morning glories this time around. Oh, that's a nostalgic name. I used to grow them back in school. Mayuko smiled. Takuko said something like that too. They always remind a person of school. Yeah. Speaking of which, Takuko told me a lot about you too, I said, changing the subject. Nothing too strange though, I hope. No, nothing bad. She is simply telling me about her friends here. I'm glad to hear that. The nurse made an exaggerated sigh and stood up while brushing some of the sweat off her forehead. After a bit of small talk, I realized that the sky had begun growing orange in color. Right, I promised to make a call around this time. A call? I'm sorry, but could you let me use the phone in the lobby? You can use the one in the office. The phone we have in the lobby needs coins to operate. That's okay. It won't take long anyway. Then feel free to use whichever phone you like. Thanks. I'll go make that call now. Okay, take care. I started toward the door leading back into the building. Before entering, I stole a final glance at Mayuko and saw her waving me goodbye. Okay, Narasaki can call Sachiko from this clinic. Isn't that interesting? I checked the clock as I returned to the lobby. It was 6 o'clock. I picked up the receiver and fished out a few coins from my pocket. I placed them by the phone, leaving only one in my hand. I put it into the slit on the phone and rotated the dial. Pressing the receiver against my ear, I listened to the beeping sound, waiting for Sachiko to pick up. Isn't that interesting? Chapter 9. Return. There's 11 chapters total in this game. We are coming to the end of it. Oh, they're so adorable! Good morning, Sachi. I felt like I heard Takuko's voice. I opened my eyes to see an elaborately designed ceiling. I sat up and fixed the shoulder strap of my nightgown. The side of the Victorian sofa and the fancy chest of drawers with the plants on top had grown familiar to me before I knew it. I felt similar to how I did when I stayed at my grandparents' place for extended amounts of time. I pulled the feather-filled sheet closer to myself and inhaled a deep breath. The scent made me think of home. These chapters are getting shorter. We really are coming to the end, I think. Give me just a second here. Nane left for her meeting right after breakfast. I myself returned to my room to get ready for hiking. Nane had already prepared some sandwiches for me to eat on the road, so there was little else I had to do besides getting changed. My change of clothes were a thermal underwear, a thicker jacket, a small bag, a hat, and a pair of hiking shoes I stuffed at the bottom of my suitcase. I ended up picking them because they gave me a certain kind of look, but I wasn't entirely sure of their actual practicality. I went outside as soon as I finished my preparations. The sky was crystal clear, just like Nane predicted yesterday. I took a deep breath, letting the scent of trees flood my nostrils. This time I left the mansion through the front entrance. I passed by the gates next to the parking lot and paused in front of the curving mountain road. To the left stretched the wide road that Nane drove down to the town. To the right, the road narrowed, becoming too tight for cars to pass through. Nane told me to follow it if I wanted to go to the mountains. I took out the hiking map for beginners that was left in the lobby and continued toward the first of the marked destinations. I checked my watch to see it was 11:30. The path for the hiking course was actually better paved than the road Nane used to drive to the mountain. It was surprisingly flat, too. I had to climb a few stairs here and there, but there were no steep slopes like I had been expecting. The song of birds echoed across the sky. Whenever the chirping became somewhat louder, I'd pause and look for them in the tree branches or among the rocks. Thus far, I'd discovered a Dorian redstart, a pale thrush, and a brown-eared bulbul. All of them were in the bird encyclopedia Kozue found for me. This mountain seemed to have a surprising number of birds, just like Nane said. The scenery peeking through the thick woods was the same one I saw when Nane drove me up to the mansion, a range of mountains and the sea clearly visible in the distance. Besides that, I only spotted a moss-covered old temple, a relatively high waterfall hidden by the surrounding trees, a shallow river running between the rocks, and a small, ancient-looking dam. I'd spend some time looking at each new thing I'd discovered. When I found none, I'd instead look for birds. I reached my destination, the observation platform, by 12 o'clock. As I climbed up to it, the scenery of the southern sea extended before me in the distance. The land here curved from the east and continued to the other side of the sea. The green lands and the azure sea seemed almost like they went on forever, all the way to the very edge of the world under the already boundless blue sky. I sat down on the bench I found on the platform, placing my bag by my feet. I had a quick sip from the water bottle I kept in the bag's side pocket, then took out my sandwiches and began munching away on them. There was not a soul around. It might have been too early for the New Year's season, or perhaps the place was always this deserted. I honestly couldn't tell, but the fact remains that the area was completely deserted. I turned around and looked at the way I came from, but saw no traces of anyone having ascended the path behind me. I listened to the chirping of birds as I ate. A bird landed on one of the tree branches above me. It was a species I'd already spotted before. It was fun to find birds hidden in the scenery. I couldn't recognize most of them, but whenever I found one I did, it made me happy. Bird watching might have been a much more fun hobby than I thought. I wondered if I could make out the birds better if I had one of those binoculars. If I memorized the voices described in the book, I could probably spot and recognize way more species than I did now. I went hiking today just because I figured it'd probably be a waste not to. But it ended up being much more fun than I expected. I had no companions to talk to, so I had no choice but to entertain myself solely by observing nature, looking for more animals or interesting trees. Takako would have probably spotted a lot more things than I did. That only meant I had more things to look forward to in the future. I inhaled a breath and rose to my feet, my body feeling somewhat heavy. It was about time to start heading home. The map's recommended route was not the same road I used to come here. Instead, it led around the mountain, emerging near the back of the library. I could feel the cool breeze on my skin. I descended the gentle slope, fighting against gravity's attempts to hasten my step. I crossed the river, careful of the moss-covered, slippery-looking rocks. After a few more minutes on the path, I emerged onto a wide road. I paused there for a moment. As I took out the map from my bag to confirm the direction I should continue in, I spotted a girl walking toward me from one end of the road. It was Kozue. Hello. Hello. Are you going to the library? I asked. Kozue nodded and asked if I was planning to go somewhere. I answered that I was actually on my way back. She gave me an apprehensive look. As I was trying to understand what it meant, she passed by me. I put the map back in the bag and followed her. Do you know a lake that should be around here? It's that way. Kozue pointed at the woods. Looking in the direction she pointed, I couldn't see anything other than the trees. There's a road further down. I'll show you. I followed the path that Kozue showed me. After only a few dozen meters, I could make out a body of water through the tree branches. The lake stretched much wider than I had thought, its surface still as a mirror. I sat down on a half-withered tree I found lying on a small, sandy beach. It turned out to be sturdier than it looked. It didn't seem like I had to worry about it crashing down under my weight. I shifted my gaze back to the lake, observing the black, humus-covered slope come in contact with the water, as well as another fallen tree with its roots sticking out next to it. It didn't seem like the lake had received any artificial treatment. The area I'd been sitting at was the closest I could get to the water without the risk of falling in. The water was so clear I could see the sand at the lake's bottom. At some areas, it seemed like the surrounding vegetation had also invaded the lake itself, covering parts of its bottom in green. Watching the lake reminded me of that one time Takako invited me to go fishing. We were still in middle school. Takako, me, and two of her good friends at the time left our houses on our bicycles. Our destination was the lake that Takako's family used to visit by car all the time. She was the only one who knew the location. Takako said it only took 20 minutes by car, but being 2 mountains and 1 river away, the place wasn't exactly easy to reach for a bunch of children. In truth, Takako's 2 friends gave up after seeing the slope leading over the first mountain. I would have left myself, but I knew Takako would not give up and try to press on, with or without us. It would have been bad if she got lost, so I followed her while making sure to remember the way. Memorizing the unusual roofs of the houses around the mountains, I was thinking that I'd have Takako turn back around noon, even if by force. However, by noon, we had already reached the lake. Takako was overjoyed by having reached the place from her memories. She told me how little of the way she actually remembered. I looked at the lake currently in front of my eyes. The lake we found with Takako didn't have a wooden pier or a proper path leading to it. It was as wild as the forest around it. It also had a big tree leaning right over the water. Takako had the bright idea to do her fishing from atop that very tree. Meanwhile, I laid down a sheet on the sandy beach by the lake, just like this one, and ate a jam sandwich while observing her. It was a pleasant, silent place. We spent about 2 hours at that lake. I read a book I'd brought while Takako attempted to fish. Big fish would sometimes jump above the water, causing ripples to spread along the lake's surface. Though we didn't catch anything in the end, Takako was satisfied by the experience. I couldn't remember the way back out all that well, but by the time we got back, it was already dark outside. Needless to say, our parents were furious. When we left the lake, Takako suggested we come back another day. I did give her a half-hearted reply of sorts, but I wasn't really planning on ever coming back. As such, that was the first and last time we went to that lake. I felt a bit sad, so I took a deep breath and slowly exhaled. That was but another little episode from my past. The chilly air filled my lungs, soothing my aching heart. Now that I thought about it, that might have been the farthest trip I'd ever taken on a bicycle, and I'd forgotten all about it until now. I tried remembering my childhood. Fishing, hot springs, amusement parks, zoos, aquariums. Takako forced me to accompany her to a whole variety of places. As I remembered the lake from my past, it felt like it began overlapping with the one I was staring at now. Before I knew it, I couldn't tell which detail was supposed to belong to which scenery. I quickly snapped out of that state, realizing I'd been breathing heavily. It probably would have been wise to stay away from those memories until I calmed down, but they started swirling around me like a ship that had lost its rudder. I soon gave up on resisting, and instead decided to take an objective look at them. First, I asked myself whether this lake was part of the real world. All lakes look the same anyway, I answered myself. That was probably more or less true. When you start thinking about it too much, the resemblance becomes all the more striking. Or perhaps my memories were actually being overridden by this scenery. You've never been here before. In any case, this wasn't that lake, and I had no way of returning to the past. What is going on with Sachiko? Is there something more to her than I think? Oh, welcome back. I ran into Lily in the lobby. Hello. I hear you were out hiking. How far did you go? I followed the route on your map up to Sukuradai. Oh, Sukuradai. The scenery is quite striking there, especially during good weather. It was nice, wasn't it? I could see beyond the gulf from the observation platform. I had lunch there, then circled around the mountain to come back. I see. Nana has only just returned too. I think she's preparing dinner right now. I see. Oh, that's right. I brought Kozue to the architectural office the other day. Everyone really liked her. At first she was quiet as a mouse, but once we began talking about the mansion, she suddenly started asking more and more questions until even the guys at the office started to run out of answers. In the end, they told us to come visit again sometime. I'm glad to hear that. Kozue said she was worried about bothering everyone with her curiosity. I see. I'm the one who invited her, so there was really no need for her to worry. I think she's already considering these things at her age. My, what a nice girl. She might come off as a bit shy at first, but once you talk to her, you realize she can be surprisingly assertive. And she's cute as a button to boot. I wish Nana was more like her when she was a child. I imagine Nane was quite active in her younger years. Indeed she was. At Kozue's age, she was still running around the mountains looking for insects. Yes, she didn't seem like the kind of girl who'd be afraid of bugs. I imagined Nane chasing after insects and fishing in the mountains, which in turn made me remember Takako. Oh, will you look at the time, said Lily as she glanced at the clock. To tell the truth, I still haven't finished some of my duties. We can discuss Nana's childhood some other time. Okay. See you later then. See you. After that, I climbed the stairs and returned to my room. I undressed, took a shower, and changed into something more comfortable. I glanced out the window while drying my hair at the dresser and saw the evening sun beginning to gradually shower the mountain range with its crimson rays. After lightly combing my hair, I descended to the lobby. The grandfather clock had just struck 5 o'clock. I considered going to the kitchen to look for Nane, but then realized I would probably be getting in the way of her cooking, so I changed my mind. I shifted my eyes to the corner of the lobby, remembering the reading area Nane and I designed together. Now that I looked at it, I got worried whether a chair would really fit there. Curious about the overall design of the room, I sat down on one of the stools by the wall and began to slowly scrutinize my surroundings. I could hear the grandfather clock creak with each new swing of its pendulum. That old thing must have been a pain to maintain. A jug with a forest plant in it rested on the counter. A black phone slumbered all alone on a stool in the corner. I felt like Nane had nothing to worry about concerning the lobby coming off as dull. By the time the orange rays of the sun penetrated the stained glass on the door, I started to regret not bringing a book with me. Being left with no other options, I spent some time observing the patches of sunlight as they slowly traveled from the center of the lobby to the camellia, then to the old register on the counter. I suddenly remembered how I met Nane in Rome. She said she was looking for some new furniture. Even this room alone had an expensive-looking glass shelf on the other end of the counter, an old decorative typewriter, and some seemingly antique stools, not to mention all the other things I'd already mentioned. I wondered how much of those Nane collected by herself. At a closer look, I realized the items all seemed to date back to a wide variety of periods and came from all sorts of regions. However, they were now all a part of the world Nane created. A place filled with the soothing, nostalgic atmosphere that reminded me of the Western tales I used to read as a child. I figured I should ask her about what her buying standards were. A continuous ringing sound shook me awake from my daydream. It appeared to be the phone. It continued to ring as I gazed at it. It didn't seem like Lily or anyone was coming back to pick it up. I stood up and walked in front of the phone. I picked up the receiver. Hello? Hello? The voice from the other end of the line sounded kind of nostalgic. I instantly recognized it as Narasaki's. I'm sorry. I made you promise to call, but I ended up forgetting about it. Oh, don't worry about it. I wasn't sure if I'd have time to call anyway. Did you manage to get back all right? Yep, she said. One of her usual snorts followed. Suddenly I heard the gong of the grandfather clock. Hello? Yeah. Is something wrong? Narasaki asked as the sound startled me. No, the clock just surprised me, that's all. Hearing me say that, Narasaki let out another chuckle. The clock continued to gong. I felt like I could hear it from the other end of the line, too. Did you like flowers, Sachiko? Flowers? Yep, flowers. Well, I suppose I do. Not much more than the average person, though. In that case, maybe you should try growing a garden as a hobby. Why? That sounds pretty random, coming from you. Taking care of living things does wonders for relaxation. I'd recommend keeping a pet, but you're allergic to fur if I remember correctly. I just thought it'd fit you. Really? Well, I'll have to think about it. How's your schedule looking? When do you think I should drop by your clinic again? Narasaki didn't say anything, so I brought up the subject myself. However, she didn't answer right away, instead making a long pause. I don't think we'll be able to meet for a while. Why? I got a sudden new job. I'll have to travel a bit far for a while. What do you mean far? Where are you going? And what's going to happen to your clinic? The location isn't clear yet. As for the clinic, I'll be closing it. That's sudden. Sorry, but I'll be busy for a while, Narasaki said as I fell silent. She explained that we would not be meeting for a long while. I was even planning to buy her a present on the way back, but now I felt a little dejected by the sudden turn of events. Hey, these things happen, you know, Narasaki added as I absent-mindedly coiled the phone's cord around my finger. If... I started but gave up. It's going to be lonely without you, I said instead. You can always call Nane or Lily if you need company. I suppose so. Calling Nane from time to time did sound like a pretty good idea, but I also felt like Narasaki's departure would leave a gaping hole in my life. If you still feel lonely, just blame it on the season. It's all too easy to get caught up in the melancholy mood when it's cold and silent outside. Your apartment has a balcony, right? Try growing primroses. They're strikingly colorful things that actually bloom in winter. I'll give that a try, if I feel like it. Good. Well then, I'll be hanging up. There's still something I need to take care of. I see. What's wrong? Is there still something you want to tell me? I was already prepared to hear her say goodbye, but she didn't end the conversation just yet. What makes you think that? I pulled my finger away from the cord, letting it stretch back to its original length. Whenever you left your grandparents' house in the country, you'd always keep waving at them from the rear window of the car until they were completely out of sight. How would Narasaki possibly know this? That's the kind of child you were. I'm not a child anymore. You really think so, Narasaki said. I'm hanging up. Okay. See you. See you. I pulled the receiver away from my ear and placed it on the phone. I breathed a deep breath as I let go of it and stole a glance at the clock. Its minute arrow was pointing at the number 2. That wasn't a very long conversation. The pieces of the stained glass on the door glowed a navy blue. As I considered going back to my room to wait for dinner, I suddenly felt kind of tired and didn't want to climb the staircase. I sat down on the same stool as before and waited for my sudden exhaustion to pass. I glanced at the phone, but remembering Narasaki's last words, quickly looked away. Placing my elbow on my knees, I rested my forehead on my palms. I closed my eyes, listening to the pendulum swing back and forth. I opened my eyes to see the already familiar canopy above my head. I promptly sat up and slid out from under the sheets as I always did. Then I got changed and headed off to breakfast. I guess this is the next morning. This should be the day when Sachiko goes back to Tokyo, right? As I reached the cafeteria, I saw Nane with my breakfast at the usual table. I greeted her and we began eating together. The meal consisted of bread rolls, scrambled eggs, spaghetti, spinach salad, sausages, and a handful of cherry tomatoes. This looks even more extravagant than usual. It's your last breakfast here, so I felt like putting in a bit of extra effort. You can leave some if it's too much. The rolled bread had soft ham and crispy cheese inside. After finishing the bread, I scooped up a mouthful of spaghetti with my fork. It's like a 5-course meal. Yeah, and this is just breakfast. This is pretty nostalgic. I remembered having something similar back in school, though it wasn't this good. Right? I liked them so much I ended up looking up the recipe. Those noodles look kind of unusual. Do they even sell those in the supermarket? They're called soft noodles. You can get them directly from the manufacturers if you order a large amount. I see. Apparently, they're specially made for school lunches. They don't get as mushy as the normal ones and are supposedly better for digestion. Yeah, I remember how easily they tear just from a gentle touch of your chopsticks. Exactly! Nane nodded. I realized this after looking it up, but apparently Japanese school lunches after the war mostly used bread imported from America. The noodle industry eventually caught wind of it and decided to increase the variety of food available in schools, developing those noodles as a result. They're especially rich in the B1 and B2 vitamins that children desperately needed back in those days. It all started in Tokyo before eventually spreading all across the country. I would never have guessed that this spaghetti had such a rich history. We spent the rest of our lunch discussing the kind of food we used to eat at school. Well, lunch. First meal of the day. Apparently Nane was a big fan of mackerel miso soup. When I mentioned I liked to make sushi rolls, she taught me a few tricks to make the process easier and the results neater. I spent the afternoon in the mansion like I always did. After packing my bags, I made it down to the lobby. Nane promised she'd meet me with her car, but I arrived a bit earlier than the agreed upon time. I placed my bags under the counter and lingered in the lobby for a while. I was thinking about sitting down on the stool when the black phone entered my vision. It didn't seem like it would be ringing again anytime soon. Is something wrong? Did my phone offend you in some way? Nane appeared in the doorway behind the counter. Checking the clock, I realized it was about time for my departure. No, it's nothing. I see. Well, let's be on our way, I guess. Right. How did you like it here? Nane asked as we rattled down the road, the same road I ascended on my first day here. I had a great time. It's been so long since I felt so relaxed. I'm almost looking forward to going back to work the day after tomorrow. Glad to hear it. The car rattled as it passed over a big hole on the road, making Nane grow silent. I caught a glimpse of the sea beyond the trees around us. Feel free to drop by for another visit if you're ever in the mood. Oh, definitely. Nane told me she still had some unfinished work to attend to as we parted ways at the station. After waiting a minute or so for me to go inside, she drove away. I found a small shop inside the station. I wonder what kind of shop this is. I briefly inspected its lineup. It had some snacks, newspapers, and a souvenir corner. So a corner shop. Key holders, wood carvings, and glass sculptures lined a long shelf. I found a familiar writing utensil among the lineup, clips with cute bears on them. I felt like I had too few to put them to any real use, so I considered buying a bit more here. But as I wondered if it was really necessary, I grew worried about the time. I checked the clock inside the station and realized it was about time for my train. In the end, I bought 2 packs of clippings, thinking I might as well give the extra ones to my workmates as presents. Then I bought a few more things I thought they might like. I bought the ticket at the booth Nane told me about, and as soon as I stepped onto the platform, the train arrived. Aww. The train car rocked back and forth. I let out a sigh, then inhaled a breath, realizing that the air here smelled a lot like the way it does back home in the countryside. A complex mix of steel, trees, the sea, old buildings, and incense. The scent waned with each station we passed. Instead, the towns began to grow bigger and bigger. After the next station, we emerged next to a highway along the sea. I watched the sun set along the sea, illuminating the train car in its orange glow. It sank deeper and deeper into the western horizon. Ah, that's beautiful. Look at that sunset. I closed my eyes, turning my face to the center of the light. I imagined a world where the sun rose from the west. Takako was sleeping there on the other side. The faint sun rays would soon fall on her closed eyelids, gently waking her. She would then do her usual routine of radio exercises and head to work. That silly train of thought was enough to make me feel like I would be okay. Opening my eyes, I saw the entire train car painted in orange. It felt almost like I was in a pleasantly warm bath. I truly managed to put my vacation time to good use this time. The hallucinations and ear ringing that had been plaguing me for quite a while seemed to have completely disappeared over the past few days. I felt like I could return to work in top shape, but I also wasn't planning to take on as much as I used to near the end of the year. I shoved my right hand into the pocket of my jacket to confirm my ticket when my fingers touched something cold and hard inside. I took it out and realized it was the penguin toy Kozue gave me as a gift. It shone dully in the orange light, its silly face looking somewhat sad. I felt a tear roll down my cheek. Wondering if a stray sun ray reflected on some nearby surface had hurt my eye, I slightly rubbed it. When I did, another tear spilled forth from it. I paused for a moment, unable to understand what was causing this. No other tears followed, with the second one remaining moist on my cheek. The exact same scenery I'd observed on my way here drifted along on the other end of the window. But I felt like I myself was now somewhat different. Something didn't add up. I felt like I left something behind in that mansion. I could recall someone telling me I had nothing to worry about anymore, but I couldn't remember who it was or when it happened. And I had a feeling I'd never be able to. I touched the trail left by the teardrop on my cheek, feeling a pain in my heart every time the tray cart swayed. It was like something important was being peeled away from it little by little. However, I had no way of escaping the moving train. All I could do was sit here, waiting for it to reach its final destination. I felt like I heard a faint voice in the corner of my mind, but I couldn't make it out. A deep darkness enveloped everything. This is sad. Well, this is a good time to stop. What in the world was that sound? This is a good place to stop. It's possible that next week will be the final episode. If these next 2 chapters are as short as this one was, but I don't know. Maybe not. I don't know. We'll just have to see. All I know is that this was a eventful day, and I feel like I got a pretty good understanding of what's going on. When we come to the end of the game, I'm going to share my full thoughts on it. This is a very nice game. It's definitely got my interest, and it's sad to think that we're almost at the end of it. We are. We only have 2 chapters left. So yeah, I'll be back next Sunday to continue my playthrough of SeaBed. Possibly to end it. We'll have to see what happens. Okay, thanks Dimlord for being here. Shout out to the lurkers, and shout out to everyone who watches this on YouTube afterwards. I'll be back next Sunday to continue this. I'll be back on Tuesday to play something else. Until then, on behalf of Eastasiasoft, I have been Skull. Double checking something here. Okay, have yourselves a great day and a great week, and I will see you all next time. Bye-bye.